Okay, so this is something that I just drafted and I've sent through. We'll just pop it up there and see what people think. So what this is suggesting is that we've been provided with some responses to the subcommittee's recommendations. My suggestion is that we now take those responses back to the subcommittee, along with some further information around the actions that they've identified, and then we take it from there. How does that sound as the chair of that committee, Councillor Pravanov?
I'll accept that, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I'm moving this recommendation and seconded by Councillor Coe. I think that, so I'll do my opening remarks. I think that this motion deals with the concern that noting recommendations doesn't actually commit us to any further course of action and potentially undermines the value of some of those recommendations that come from our community boards and subcommittees, which is something we've been attempting largely to deal with, but today we hadn't yet. So that's been moved and seconded. Do we have any further debate around that? No. So I'll put that. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried, and we have 2 abstentions, Councillor Cooper and Councillor Spires. They're abstentions rather than, yeah, abstentions. Great. Oh, Martin. How did Martin vote?
He's not on.
So, sorry. We've kind of moved in second. We've kind of voted now, but I wasn't alerted to the fact that Councillor Halliday had his hand up. So I'll allow him to speak.
Through Madam Chair, quite happy to accept the motion. I just wanted to know where it fitted in. Was it meant to have a letter attached to it, or did it just sit under H?
Good question. I think it's J. I? Do we have an I? Because sometimes people skip I because it's like a 1. It's J. We already have an I. Thank you, Councillor Halliday. That's really helpful. This is now J. Great. Okay, so I think Ninka had a little plug to do before the team leave the table.
A further question. In relation, do we actually need the word additional recommendation if now
that won't be included.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question. Ninka.
My quick plug is the request to fill out the survey that was provided to staff, senior leadership and elected members on climate change and sustainable transport. We haven't had that much response from councillors yet, and it would be great if we had a lot of response. Thank you very much.
Could we have that sent again to us so it's at the top of our inboxes?
Yes.
For those of us who have about 500 emails that they need to get through.
Well,
apparently
5 or 6 have been able to, so but I'll check that out.
We will certainly
send to everybody.
Improve that, and if community board chairs could pass on encouragement through your community boards as well, because it'd be great to get some responses from community board members as well.
I was just going to say that it does actually have an impact.
Do you have anything further to add?
I'm just going to say that the survey is, it's not just, it has some questions in there that are really helpful and informative for us to know, but it also has some questions in there around how you commute to and from the council chambers or your work, and that actually goes into our category 3 to 6 emissions reporting for this council. So the more accurately that you can share that information with us, the better that we can report those emissions in our inventory. So it's not just useful, it's actually a really important part of our work.
Thank you, Miriam. And can I take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of us all for the incredible work you've done for our organisation. I believe you're leaving us soon, so it's probably the last council meeting at least you'll attend, and particularly around this emissions reduction work. It's just, I think we're in a really good place and poised to do really well into the future as well. So thank you for what you've done in your time for us and your passion in this area and your commitment to addressing the real challenge of climate change and bringing that in a practical way to us. Thank you so much. Thanks, Dinka. So now we have elected member training and development plan. Steffi. Yes, you can stay there.
Kia ora koutou, through you, Madam Chair. I'll take the report largely as read and just wanted to point out that we're asking you to adopt the attached elected member training and development plan, but also that for the years 2 and 3 of the plan that you would authorise the Mayor to approve attendance at the LGNZ conference and those that wanted to attend the RMA training. And there are a couple of names mentioned in the recommendations. Councillor Prabanov, that you would approve her recertification, and the attendance of the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Holliday, Councillor Hanford and Councillor Prabanov at the local government conference in July. I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? Oh no, our light's not working anymore.
Is it?
Oh, Councillor Coe. Yep,
Oh,
you're good to
okay.
go.
Look, I do have some questions about this. And normally in an organisation, there is a sort of a training needs analysis done, and there is a customised training plan done for staff, so to speak. I'm just wondering whether we could perhaps do some kind of a survey of elected members to gauge the level of interest in some of the proposed trainings, and also to perhaps highlight any that might be considered to be mandatory or, you know, strongly encouraged. I don't know whether you can have mandatory training for councillors. Are we free agents?
Don't
in
think you
terms
can
of-
have mandatory anything
No,
for councillors,
no.
actually.
So, but I think, you know, it would be useful to gauge the level of interest before we start arranging workshops and training and, you know, logins to online training, all that sort of thing. And yeah, that may impact on what's delivered, and also there may be other things that are not on the list that councillors may be interested in receiving training on. So I would say, you know, before we, you know, can we do that kind of a survey before we proceed with implementing anything?
It's a new one on me. Steffi? Maybe Steffi could have your microphone.
The microphone. There we go. Sorry. So in terms of the survey, I just wanted to point out that there was a survey done after the induction, but as to whether another survey could be done to gauge the situation as it is at the moment, I will pass on to Janice or Darren. But so it was one of the questions as part of the induction survey where we asked about any future training needs, opportunities for elected members.
Yeah, but I think this is a bit more specific.
Hang on, just wait for your microphone, sorry.
So this is a little bit more specific in that it identifies particular courses and workshops and what have you, whereas, yeah, it's not just a general question around training and development. So I think, you know, given that we're getting into the nitty-gritty of it, it would be useful to undertake a more detailed survey specifically in this area. Can we do that?
Yes, understanding the specific needs of individual councillors or aspirations when it comes to training is something that we've had conversations about, and there are we're aware of some approaches that other councils use where they actually have one-on-one conversations with each elected member and develop, I guess, an elected member equivalent of what we would call an individualised training plan for our staff. And that is certainly the space that we're keen to get to for the portion of the training budget that is the extra piece that's discretionary to be applied to bespoke training needs for individual elected members, as opposed to the sort of the core competencies work that are probably closer to being that mandatory thing that we can't actually make mandatory, but like that common understanding and refreshers over the course of the triennium. So probably a more personal approach rather than a survey was what the team had in mind that they might start rolling out within the framework that they're seeking you to adopt today.
Okay.
Councillor Halliday. Just waiting for the unmute.
Apologies. Thank you for this. Certainly endorse what Councillor Coe was just talking to. Got 4 quick things I'd just like to bring up. Not be succinct. One, I just note with the and I appreciate it's not really questions, but this is a bit of a back and forward conversation thing, I think. But I'll be brief. The Akona trainings that we got, I note that a lot of them were actually on Tuesdays, and that's why it was difficult to attend. We were talking about diary planning before. If we are going to move forward with the Akona trainings, that might need to be diarised into the meetings diary as such. Just one point. The next one, if I could express some interest in the RMA training, I'll be interested in finding out a bit more about that. The next thing, it was alluded to last triennium, but as part of team building, maybe a marae visit or an overnight marae visit, or even visiting some of the maraes around the district as part of our relationship building process. That's maybe something that the new GM could perhaps look at developing into the program over the next maybe year or 2. And then the only other issue I have is around point number 31, which talks about team building sessions. It seems to allude that the councillor only sessions being team building opportunities. I do not see them that way. To me, a councillor only session is that. It's a chance for us to chew the fat on issues that are important to us that we want to flesh out potentially with other councillors, or discuss issues in confidence. I'm concerned that they're now being tagged as a team building exercise, and then basically we still don't get the opportunity to have those conversations, which I think are critically important. I'll leave that one on the table as my point of view. Bill, happy to get some comment back from the Mayor on that one, potentially, or from Janice.
Okay, I'll hold my comment on the last one so I can take them in order. Steffi,
Do you want me to?
Yes, please.
So in terms of the Akona sessions, Councillor, we have definitely taken note of that and have already fed that back to Akona. Obviously, we are not organising those, so we don't necessarily hold the control over those. But it has been fed back to LGNZ to let them know that Tuesdays and Thursdays are just a little bit difficult for our council. In terms of the second one, that was around a marae visit, in the second year of the plan, there is a placeholder for more training on Te Amahari, Tikanga, Te Reo. So that is just a placeholder amount at the moment. What that looks like, absolutely, we can talk to the GM when she starts and see what that actually looks like.
Yeah, so I probably need to answer the third one, which is the councillor-only sessions. So they can be whatever we want them to be. Let's have that discussion. What worked quite well on Tuesday was a little bit of team building, a little bit of councillor-only session. But for sure, we need to sit down and just talk. They shouldn't be activity-based all the time. So, yeah, take that on board. Thanks, Councillor Halliday. Councillor Warwick.
Wasn't staying green before. Just a couple of questions. Is there a list of the opportunities that we can take as councillors for training? And what is it in here?
Well, yeah, they've listed a whole lot of trainings. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And
We'll get that redistributed. Those links.
Like with regard to say an RMA certification, what is involved? Like what commitment is involved and stuff? Is that in that paper too?
We can get
And
that information out to councillors as
just
well.
if you were making a decision to put your name forward, and is there an amount per councillor, or is it just for the council as a whole for training?
So the amount is for elected members. So we would propose to schedule sessions where everyone can attend, all of the elected members. There are specific training budgets for the community board separately as well. But for the all of elected member sessions, it's just for everyone to attend rather than specifically for councillors. But as Janice has alluded to, there is a amount that is unallocated, and those would be then for specific councillors to make a request through the mayor if they had any specific training that they wanted to be considered, and that's how that would be approved. And that has been specifically left unallocated to allow for that.
Great. I think Councillor Wilson has a question, but he's having trouble.
Yeah, we will.
with
Yeah, I
the
think we are. Like
microphone.
Oh, that's me. Sorry, Nigel.
Councillor Cooper, in the meantime.
Thank you. Yeah. I was just looking at the working with media and social media workshop, and it just got me thinking. In particular to that one, we have a big media team here that has an enormous amount of skill, and I would think that $6,000 would be better investing in our staff, so that they can train us, as opposed to the $6,000 going to LGNZ, and then
Can I
we build
respond to that?
capacity in our team. Is that
I can respond to that, having
Yeah.
attended some of those media trainings.
seems a lot?
So the skills that you learn in those media training are quite specific to how you deal with things as an elected member. And we did one, a few of us, on emergency response recently, for instance, and that's quite particular and wouldn't necessarily, and also the way it's delivered is quite a particular skill. So I wouldn't think that we should expect that we would have that capability within our staff. Really worth doing and highly recommended if the next time it's offered.
My point was we may not have that now, but if we invested $6,000 into someone who wanted to, then we would have that in-house.
So we'll take that suggestion on board. I think the suggestion is that we train one of our staff members to be able to deliver
Considerable amount of money.
those programs. Yeah.
Long-term benefit.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Wilson.
Okay. I'm happy to provide free media training to anybody who's interested, actually.
Thank you.
Yep. 35 years experience. Just actually in terms of the budget for that, that's I don't know, how's that broken down? It's got media training $6,000, but I mean that's not for one person to go to a workshop, so I'm not quite sure how that gets broken down. It's a question. The Education Perfect Te Reo course, I presume that's Te Reo Maori. It's something I learnt last night actually. So just the reference to Te Reo is just the language. So if it's Italian, I'll pass on that one. But if it's Te Reo Maori, I'm interested. So that presumably is an online course. Okay. So and it says it's a 9-month access. So is that course just like it's already there and you can join at any time? It's not a time specific thing, is it? Or is it? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So in terms of the Te Reo course, it is time specific. So you would be signed up for 9 months from a specific date, and all elected members would be signed up at the same time. Council staff are currently enrolled, or some of the council staff are currently enrolled in those sessions, and they're valuable. So that's how that would work. Can you just reiterate what the first question was? Sorry.
Code red. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so it was just around when that timing is, and if everybody has to start at the same time to be part of it, that could get tricky as well.
So we haven't actually nailed down a timing at this point. So that could be in consultation with all elected members as to when you would like to start. There are certain start times.
So we've been piloting this with staff over the last few months, and generally what happens is that you onboard a cohort at once, and I think our cohorts internally had 40 people or so. And the reason why you do it as a cohort is so that there is an opportunity for people that are going through the course at the same time to have a bit of a community of participants that they can work within. It also enables us to look at how our council staff can support the different phases of that work through, different study groups or other kind of support mechanisms. It is although that some of the timeframes are specified in the system itself gives you goals for what modules you need to achieve by what date, it is largely a self-directed exercise. And one of the things that we've learnt as we've progressed with staff on this is that self-directed way of learning doesn't always work for everybody. So we would also, as part of taking a cohort approach, want to be having conversations with each of you individually around what support through that process would look like, which I hope goes towards answering some of the queries that you had, Councillor.
And I don't know. Oh, there we go. And my final point is, I thought I came here as a fully developed person, but Kim tells me I need behaviour training. I can't see where that fits in here, but I do wonder about the broader scope of what may be available to councillors in terms of training that's relevant. Also, if you look at the RMA certification, so we currently have 3 people who are RMA certified. There's a very strong likelihood they go through an entire 3-year period without ever appearing anywhere near a hearing. So I just wonder if, I was RMA certified and in 9 years sat on 4 hearings, I think. So there's a point at which we're training people not necessarily for a reasonable purpose. It's spending quite a lot of budget for, it might be of interest, but it's not going to be of value. You know what I mean? I mean, most of the training that's provided should really have at least some ancillary value back to council. So if you want to send me over to do that full immersion Italian course in Rome, I'm happy to do it. I'm not quite sure how much value that would add to the whole of the council, but I'm happy to take it under advisement.
We can explore that offline.
Like they can request independence. I'm just getting some clarification as to whether we need to have RMA trained commissioners in case somebody requests them. I know that they can request an independent, but can they request an elected member to be on the panel?
I'm not sure that any of the staff in the room can answer that. Darren,
So
we'll come
that's
back with that answer.
So that's
Yeah.
a question that we can
Yeah.
answer later. I would quite like to respond to that from the chair though. Having done the chair's course twice, I think the value isn't just around your ability to sit on a hearings panel. I think you learn some pretty deep and valuable skills, and also a way of thinking that's different and also really valuable, and I'm sure Councillor Pravanov would agree. And the calibre of people that you get to do that course with once you get to that chair's training level is just, it's really inspiring. It's another whole level of decision making and operation that you then bring back to council. So to me, even if you never sat on a hearings panel in 3 years, it would still bring value back to council.
No, it has enormous value having done it myself. But on that, sorry, I did have one more thing, and that was the training. This says elected members, but how does this budget, or how does the training budget fit for iwi reps at council? I said community boards are covered, but if there were iwi reps who wanted to do the RMA training, for instance, or whatever, what's the availability for any of those?
I'll have first crack at that, and then if Steffi thinks I haven't quite got it right, she can follow up. For any of the courses that are available, for all elected members, it would be a matter of course that we would be inviting our iwi reps to participate in those. There's also a budget that exists within the Te Whakaminenga work program for training, and in the past had previously been used for things like RMA Commissioner training, where there was a bit of a process that where people had to apply and seek approval from the chair of Te Whakaminenga. We've spoken with all three iwi of the Art Confederation over the last 2 months, and with their agreement have redirected that budget to the iwi directly to make their own calls on how they want to use that funding towards development and succession within their own iwi for the work that iwi does with council. So there is provision within those capacity arrangements with iwi for development funding, but that doesn't preclude iwi representatives from participating in council or an elected member sessions that are part of our training program.
Good. Cam,
It's been fun with these microbes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
you've been doing really well.
I note on page 139, number 45, that each community board has a separate training and LGNZ conference budget. So looking on page 140, right at the very bottom, the very last table, it just says community board specific training. So does that include the LGNZ conference budget, or do we have another figure outside of that? And is this $4,207, is that per year, or is it just literally for the next year? Sorry to leave mine off to.
Maybe you do need
There
to
we
move
go.
to the other microphone.
I may have to. So the number that you can see in the plan is specifically for training and doesn't include the LGNZ conference, and that's because it's not occurring in this financial year, or it hasn't been announced that it is occurring in this financial year. So it hasn't been budgeted for this financial year. So I don't have the number at present because the working budget's only been created for that. But so we can send that through to you separately and let you know how much that is. In terms of the training, yes, this would be for every financial year. Of course, if that was changed through the long-term or an annual plan process, then the number would change. But there is a budget for each community board to have separate standalone training, and each community board can decide what they want to use it for.
To our councillor, is that for the full community board members? So if we were doing training, I'm just trying to see if I can spend more money, that's all. Is it $4,207 for the full members, and then if we have training that which Shelley is included in, that's included under the councillor budget training? Or is that $4,207 for all 5 of us?
So that is for each community board to decide, because depending on what you want to spend it on, it may actually be beneficial to include the ward councillor, or if you decide that for the training that you've decided to use it for, it's not beneficial, then it hasn't been decided. So it's really up to the community board and how they wish to spend it.
Could I add to that and say I think that the key factor there is whether you choose to use it to fund sessions for the collective, or whether you choose to take an individualised approach to identifying specific training for individual members of the board. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Checking in. Is Martin all good? Cool. So, we have some recommendations here. On page 135, A, B and C. Do I have a mover? Councillor Wilson. Seconded Councillor Hanford. Right of introduction. Waived. Any debate? I'll put that. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against. That's carried. Thanks, Steffi. It's been quite a bit of work. No abstentions, no divisions, thankfully. Great. Okay. 10.7, reports and recommendations from standing committees and community boards. And we're still with Steffi.
Through you, Madam Chair. We have received a couple of recommendations from community boards and actually one of the subcommittees for council to consider and note. For the second one from the Climate and Environment Subcommittee, I would just like to note that the recommendation verbatim actually includes a name of a staff member, and we would like for council to consider changing that to council officer instead, so that staff member is not specifically mentioned in the recommendation. But other than that, I can take questions, or I'm sure the community board chair and the chair of the Climate and Environment Subcommittee will be able to answer some questions as well.
I have a question. I have a question. Didn't we already get an update from? Oh, that was at the Climate and Environment Subcommittee. We had the update.
Yes.
So is this suggesting that we bring that same update to council? Is that what this is recommending?
Yeah. Yes.
So do we want to turn these into meaningful action-based recommendations? Okay, so the first one, B. First of all, do we have any questions, particularly of the community board chairs who are here? And then I'll suggest some possible motions. Martin, Councillor Halliday.
Martin's fine. Actually, just noticing the bags under my eyes. I'm going to tip the cucumbers after this.
It's okay, your box is very small on the screen. We can't see them.
Look, actually, it's actually in relation to what you were just talking about, Janet, or Madam Mayor, what is the follow-through? Reason I bring it up, I was reading the minutes, which we're going to confirm in the next paper, and there were some actions that came out of these reports and recommendations. I was wondering, where do we capture that with regards to following up or reporting back that the action's been done, or there's been some follow through on that action as such? Otherwise, fundamentally, we're just noting these things and we don't actually have a follow through system. So quite supportive of what you're just talking about with regards to trying to put some sort of capture around this, which can perhaps be reported back at the next meeting or something.
That's a work in progress, and something that we've been trying to rectify, and we saw that fell through a little bit in the first half of this meeting today. But I'm just having a little think about how we can.
Yeah, look, just putting it out there. That's all. I appreciate that it's something we're developing at the moment.
Great. Any other questions? Lawrence, Councillor Kirby.
Mine was a question about C, so we're talking about B at the moment, aren't we?
Talking about all of them.
Oh, we are talking about all of them? Okay, sorry. I see the recommendation, terms of reference coming to council, and the suggestion is to do the full update that was presented at the Climate Environment at council as well. My question is, doesn't that little bit undermine what happened at Climate and Environment if we're doing it twice? Or is it to communicate value to the cycleway, walkways, bridleways group? That one? Great. That just helps me because I wasn't part of that subcommittee meeting, so I don't understand what the intent behind that recommendation was. So if it's to communicate value and of their work, then I would support that.
Who's next? Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, again, just in terms of the process. So as we were talking earlier about subcommittees and their recommendations to council, and presumably it's not about a relitigation of these things. So, for instance, there's 2 recommendations, one from the Romantic Community Board. Presumably that's come as a recommendation on the basis that further developing that proposal is going to require some funding or some time and energy or whatever that's outside the board itself. And the second one, again, I'm not quite sure what the implications are there, but I do note that that Janice Hill specifically named there. As Steffi's pointed out, I think it's probably better to not have a specific staff member, unless they are going, it's the only person we want and nobody else. Probably not. So, just to have a council officer in that space. But to the broader thing about, so when these recommendations come from community boards to council, are we bound to really be rubber stamping them unless they are significantly outside of, if we think they're off the wall, but because otherwise what is the point of, are we then effectively saying to community boards and to subcommittees, you don't really have any power. At best, all you can do is recommend to another group, and yet that's the group that's done all the litigating of the issues around it. Do you know what I mean?
I would say that community boards do a lot of work outside of making recommendations to council.
Yeah,
but
yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure who should answer that. Is there an answer required?
Well, I'm
or
not.
is it
No,
more
I mean,
point?
it's kind of just a broad philosophical think piece, really. But it is important that, because if something comes as a recommendation, this comes as a recommendation to council, for instance, say the cycling action thing. If we were then to be discussing that and debating that as a council about whether or not to accept that recommendation, then we would be debating a subject about which we don't have all the intimate information that they had at the time that they made that recommendation. And that's that trust factor about, they've made a recommendation, do we just go yes? Unless, again, there are significant financial implications or whatever. That's just my broader point.
Yeah, it is hard to actually move a motion with no background information, which is what we're often asked to do, which is why historically we've noted the recommendations and then we go and do further work on them if we think it's appropriate. But rather than binding us to what sometimes should be a long-term plan decision through a recommendation from a community board is, it's an ongoing issue. Yeah, well, yeah. Councillor Warwick?
Oh, mine is about C and follow up to Lawrence, because I wasn't actually at that meeting, but I've been on the CWB committee for 7 years, and it was more about that coming to the full council, because it is about the economic impact of the network and the potential, and getting everyone kind of on board and excited and focused, and the visions of all the community boards being aligned with what that work is presenting. So the subcommittee is not a committee of the whole, unfortunately, and we've got economic development that wasn't there, and other people. You were there? Yeah. Oh.
So I'll remind elected members that we're still in question time. Councillor Pravanov?
Through the Mayor, Martin, Councillor Halliday was before me.
He's already had a crack at the nut, so I mean like that. Like a walnut.
So actually, no, I'll leave it till debate.
Bite of the cherry is what I meant to say. Sorry, Councillor Pravanov. Oh, she's leaving it till debate. Martin, do you have a question?
Yes, look, I appreciate we're trying to work our way through this and it's a work in motion. it seems to me that there's different points here. There's some things that are recommendations. If I could just use an example of perhaps what we could build into this. On page 150, 10.4, council supports there's a recommendation that had an action attached to it, which at the last council meeting we agreed to. And what I was referring to is wanting to know where that action was at. To me, it seems to me that there's some things that will come through as recommendations that might go to other committees, that they might just need to be noted. And there's other ones that have actually got an action attached to it. And I was just wanting to have I just wanted to know if there's a system we could put in place to just track them more than anything else so they don't get lost. Using that one on page 150 perhaps as an example to get an understanding of what I'm talking about, perhaps. And that was 150. It starts on page 149, which is that the council receives this. Yeah. If you want to have a look at it. And that one there, we requested the chief executive to seek confirmation from the PPTO project team and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a specific action. It wasn't geared towards a committee. It was just an action. It might have been reported back at a workshop or something like that. But I guess just finishing off that loop in regards to a council meeting, I was just wondering whether that needed to be sort of like signed off as a completed action. We don't really seem to have a system for that.
Yeah, I think we've made this point a few times today, and it's taken on board. Yeah,
happy for that.
Thank you, Martin. So I've got a question of the chair of the Raumati Community Board around B. Are the Kapiti Cycling Action Group aware of this recommendation, and does it fit within their current work program?
Yep, we made the motion on the night, put it to them. Sean Mallon was also present, supportive of the motion. Isn't that right, Sean? So we have supportive staff, and the action group is potentially on board of it. There's some public discussion about woohoo, we can go to the climate change grant in August and not bother with council, but that's a separate process. Obviously, if they get the funding through that process, they may not need this, but that was as it stood on the night of the meeting.
Okay. Any other questions? So I'm going to have a crack at making these action-based. I'm not really seeing any fish hooks with them, because all it is further developing a proposal. It doesn't seem to have, with a voluntary group, so it doesn't seem to have any financial implications. Could I have
there's some cost in terms of setting it up.
Yeah, I think Mr. Mallon wants to respond to that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so there's an element of cost, but the actual initiative and the program fits nicely alongside that the work we're also looking at in terms of that school travel planning mode shift. So that would fit alongside that work. The other issue was often these schemes, we've had a school travel planning process in the past. You need at least maybe a couple of years of support for them to get to sort of be bedded into the community, and then potentially you can step back and they sustain themselves. So the proposal, I think, was only for 1 year. So if we incorporate it in the long-term plan, and if it's supported by council, and we look to run it maybe for a couple of years, that would give it more opportunity to actually become a way of practice in terms of a more longer-term program.
Right. So basically, we're being asked to support something that the Raumati Community Board has identified, and it's pretty much okay with staff and with the CWB. Okay, so I've got a little. So we might want to change them so they're not just noting. So let's have.
Should it say supports?
So maybe
rather than
the first thing we
considers?
do is note these, and then we'll take actions after that. notes the following recommendation. And that way we can capture the first half of that without having to. Because I think it's important that we note them, but we should also do other things. So then copy and paste from council on. No. In the bullet point after recommends. So we're gonna copy a part of that as an actual. So in B, in the bullet point, the word council on the second line. Yep, there. So from the word council. No. Copy and paste from council to the end of the sentence into a separate bullet point. So copy that and then make a second bullet point and paste it there. And then it just takes it from that first one into an action. And then with C, same thing, that council notes. And then council will invite. So copy and paste that into a second bullet point. And then council will invite. How does that look to everybody? Thank you, Kate. You're amazing. Yeah, so first of all, we note it, and then we've created an action out of it. You can note it and create an action. There's no reason why you can't do both, I don't think. Happy to be corrected. B, did you have... Oh, okay, so yes, good. So that's C instead of a bullet point. Good point. So take away the bullet point. And that becomes D. And then the next from the red line. Yep, good point. Supports what?
Supports the recommendation, yeah.
Instead of the word considers.
Instead of considers.
Supports at the very beginning, makes it much shorter and succinct.
Sure. Okay, so instead of the word notes in both of those, supports. I still think we need the action thing because supporting it is different from actually acting on it. What do you think? Or maybe not. Will it do? That'll do, won't it? Bead.
My point's probably not quite so relevant now, but I was just going to point out when we were talking about the plan before that seems, just in supporting what Mr. Mellon was saying, that it seems the sort of thing that if it's successful in Raumati, there's no reason why it couldn't get rolled out across the district. So this would be a pilot for a much bigger thing. So good reason to support it.
Thank you for that early debate. Do I have somebody to move these? Second? Moved by Councillor Warwick, seconded by Councillor Hanford. We'll open it for debate. Rate of introduction, Councillor Warwick? Do you want to say anything? No? Councillor Pavanov, did you have your light on?
Yes, thank you. So I suppose this is in general comments, and I appreciate that these recommendations from community boards have actually come a long way to just being noted, and I suppose that's reflected in the initial wording that we have in these recommendations versus what ended up being for the recommendation for the PP20 project on at the very top of page 150. And I think that when this particular recommendation came to council, it was also noted or considered, and I think at the time it was changed. And so, to me, this is about starting at the very beginning when these recommendations come, to actually have the words support or not support, which maybe is a better way of looking at, rather than having to reword these things as we work through them. The other comment I'd like to make is that there's been a number of comments made about the follow-up about these actually occurring, and maybe there needs to be another recommendation that these are reported back to the community boards or the subcommittees that actually recommended them in the first instance, so that they know that these are being implemented. So I'd like to make a recommendation to that. Pardon? I know, yes,
And the
I
ward
know that.
councillors.
Yeah, but it's a case of where when this is done, it's not necessarily known to everyone that these have been completed. So, for example,
Can we just take that offline? I think it's a great suggestion, but I think we need to have a little bit of a think about how that might happen, and how it fits into the community board agendas. I just think it just needs a little bit of work, but I think it's a really good suggestion, and we'll follow it up, rather than making up motions on the fly today about how it's going to happen.
So another suggestion is maybe, I don't know whether the community boards have these in their matters under action, so they're not lost.
Yeah, that could be one way, but we'll work on a way to do it. I think it's a good suggestion.
Yeah. So I think the key thing is about having the wording for these recommendations from the community boards, how we want to move forward, rather than just having note or consider.
Yeah, and potentially we could work on the final wording that's going to be happening at the meeting ahead of time, rather than on the fly on the day.
Or even if it's a support yes or no. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Halliday, you're up.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Two things from my end, because we are in debate. I actually agree with what you're saying. And look, I just want to congratulate and thank staff with regards to stepping into this space, because this has been a point of issue for a while, and we are working through a process, and I think we're getting there with all that. In my opinion, these are the sorts of things that actually can get captured by the community board's own action lists with regards to the follow through on this, and it usually will get picked up there, but I look forward to the conversation with regards to refining things. I actually just want to come back to, in regards to this also, it sort of highlights a point to me. We've got the long-term plan coming up, and I'll be interested in perhaps a comment from the Chief Executive, but through the process, community boards have the opportunity to feed into that process. And what I found in the past is, and I'll congratulate Kathy Spires on this, is that she was very proactive in the last long-term plan. And we got our Paraparumi one in very, very quickly in the process. But what we found is that because we got it in quickly, a lot of council officers were able to align a lot of what was asked for into current projects. And that by having it come in early, it allowed maybe a slight expansion on those work programs to be able to accommodate some of those requests, which potentially would have been a lot harder to accommodate further on down the track. And I'm just wondering whether it could perhaps be taken on board, that perhaps that process might be a good process to instigate early on in the long-term plan process, so that council officers have an idea of what community boards are thinking about. I was just wondering if you could have some comment on that.
Yes, Chris is keen to comment on that. She's enthusiastically raising her hand.
See this look or lack of look.
Just trying to give you a picture of the vibe of the room.
Yeah, thank you. Just a note that the Mayor had raised that as an opportunity with me. I'd say it might have been a week or two ago. So Mark de Haas and I will be coming back to you with a proposed forward agenda for that, so that you have a chance to start to prepare and also ensure that it is earlier, so that you get that sort of runway in, for want of better words, to the LTP decision making. So yes, definitely.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. It's going to ramp up soon. Okay, so any further comments before I put it to the vote? Okay, I'll put that now. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Steffi. I think your job in that particular department is done, though you're still going to be helping me here. So we're moving into public excluded. No.
Yes, sorry.
So we're confirming minutes. Page 145. Moved by Councillor Wilson. Seconded by Councillor Hanford. Any comments? I think we had a comment from the member of the public who spoke, who had a correction. And it's been made?
We need to highlight it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll note for the record that the correction to the reporting of the submission by the public speaker has been corrected.
Yeah, perfect.
I'll put that to a vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. So can I have a mover that we go into public excluded? Thank you for everybody who's attending online for your attendance today. You can pop back in about an hour for our closing karakia if you want to. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this meeting. No, it'll be less than an hour. So can I have a mover that we go into public excluded? Moved by Councillor Kirby, seconded by Councillor Pravanov. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. We're now in public excluded. Okay, we don't have a report, an update